Welcome, everyone. Hopefully, you've been enjoying the summit so far with the keynote experience. I'm Justin Vaughan-Brown, Director of Product Marketing here at AppDynamics, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first of the breakout sessions in the next generation software stack today. The whole theme of this track is around the innovative technologies that have emerged over the last 3 to 5 years that can absolutely help us as we build and release class-leading applications. They help expedite these applications, improve quality, reduce cost, but they also bring challenges in terms of people, processes, skill sets that need to be learned. And in this track, we're going to cover a number of those aspects. Later on today, we have Standard Bank talking about their DevOps experience. We have Liz Rice, who will actually build a container live on stage. She doesn't have lasers, but it's still pretty cool, still pretty good. And then finally, we also have Siemens talking about IoT. Yes, it's real. Yes, it's here. Yes, they're doing it. It's not just hype. But our first session today is going to be delivered by Steve Thayer, who's the co-founder of DevOpsGuys, the award-winning DevOpsGuys, as Steve likes to remind me, winners of the most innovative DevOps consultancy with Computing Magazine. And Steve's got some great perspectives here on the twin-headed beast that is automation, the pros and cons that we need to consider. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Steve. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. So one quick question. Who knows what DevOps is in the audience? Got a good familiarity? Oh, that's good. So I don't have to give the DevOps 101 presentation, because that's a different presentation altogether. You can go to our website, have a look at that one. Great. OK, next question. Who knows what this command is? Who gets slightly queasy just seeing that up there on, yeah, this guy down here is just going, I want to get him a bucket, you know. So this command is known, particularly in the Linux people, as probably being, you know, the most dangerous command ever. You know, what it really says is remove all the files recursively and verbosely and force it. Don't worry, don't tell me if there's anything wrong. So it's 11:30 at night on a Tuesday at a soon-to-be well-known vendor in Silicon Valley. And there's a very tired and slightly frustrated system administrator is doing some maintenance work. He'd started at 6:30 that afternoon to actually roll out something, an update to their replication topology, and then he got caught up in a live site incident. There was replication lag between the primary and the secondary, the master and the slave databases. And this was partly caused by a spam attack that had hit their organization, so great automated spam attack, and partly caused by somebody internally seeing this account that had been flagged for spam and marking it and say, yeah, let's get deleting that account, without actually bothering to check that the account that he'd flagged for deletion actually belonged to one of the engineers of the organization who had thousands of repos and gigabytes worth of data and lots of information. So it was actually that automated process that was causing the replication lag. So, you know, he's having this problem, said it's 11:30 at night, he's frustrated, he's not really paying as much attention as he should, so he runs this command on the secondary server, trying to clear out the directory, so he's trying to reinitialize this database replication. It's great, kicks it off. About 2.5 seconds later, he realizes that he's run this command on the primary database and not on the secondary database. So in the space of a few seconds, they lost he was left with 4.5 gigabytes of about 310 gigabytes of data. Cue a rather well-known Twitter storm that followed about the incident. We might have accidentally deleted production data. Oops. Some interesting things that they did from a DevOps perspective is they put a live Google Doc up, and you could actually see the engineers adding content to this Google Doc. And then they actually started up a live Hangouts with a live video stream, so you can actually watch these guys debugging the problem. And there was a lot of hug ops happening, a lot of people sending messages on Twitter, hey, hug ops, you know, you guys are awesome, we're here behind you, it's all happened to us. But, you know, their main thing was, it's going to be okay, because we all know what happens in this situation. We've lost data, don't panic, you know, keep calm and restore from backup. And that's great. You know, they had automated backups. So fine. Every 24 hours, they would back up the databases, doing a Postgres, so PG dump database. It was then automatically backed up to an S3 bucket. So that's good. Every 24 hours, they did an LVM snapshot of the database, and they took that data back into their pre-production environments, and that's what they used for their testing. So it's pretty good practice. Taking automated copies of live data, that was good. And they're running on Azure, so for some servers, every 24 hours, they would take Azure disk snapshots. So they had 3 levels or so, or more levels of automated backup. Fantastic. And they also had the replication, which we knew was already bought. But as we know from Lord of the Rings, one does not simply walk into Mordor, and one does not simply restore from backup. So does anybody want to guess what happens? Actually, we'll go back one. So the Postgres database backups weren't working, okay, because of a version mismatch between the executable that was running the database and the actual version of the database. So that piece of the automation was useless. The Azure snapshot, so they don't run Azure snapshots on the database, so they didn't have Azure snapshots. So all he was left with was this LVM backup. Now, luckily, because he'd been planning to do some maintenance on the replication, he'd actually taken an LVM level snapshot at 6:30. So the latest snapshot he had was five hours old, which was actually a better situation than the 24 hours old that he otherwise would have had. I can make lots of really sarcastic comments about running a large-scale solution that only relies on backups that happen every 24 hours, and make lots of critical things about Silicon Valley people who really need to actually focus on hardcore operations, but I won't make those comments. But I will if you talk to me in the stand later. So end result for this, for GitLab, was it was hard to estimate how much data has been lost exactly. But 5,000 projects, 5,000 comments, 700 users. Now, most of what was actually really lost was the metadata about the projects. This is Git. The developers will have a local copy on their machine. They can reinitialize their Git repo by taking the thing. But all of that history, all of those issues that customers raised, all of these 700 new users, all of which might have been generating revenue for their business, all lost. Massive reputational damage. So, just to sort of summarize the good, the bad, and the ugly of this automation story, there was an automated spam attack, plus an automated user deletion process that was manually triggered against a GitLab employee account, created a replication delay that was exacerbated because they hadn't set up the automated write-ahead log archiving on their Postgres database, wasn't enabled. Yep, that one. Led to an accidental manual deletion of data, compounded by their automated backups failing, which no one had actually noticed because the email that was supposed to be telling them that, oh, your backup was failing, was blocked by their DMARC email security. So nobody ever actually got that email, and it wasn't being flagged as an event into AppDynamics, or it wasn't being flagged as a message into Slack. It's okay. It's okay, because they plan to fix this by automating the whole backup and restore cycle even more. So in a nutshell, why I wanted to tell this story was to try and give some context around why automation can be good and bad, why doing things manually, in this case, was the cause of a massive problem, but at the same time, that situation never should have occurred, maybe if they'd used some of the automation in the right way in the first place. Back up more frequently, if they'd put in write-ahead log archiving, if they'd had a better automated mechanism of getting notifications that these things were failing. So automation in and of itself is neither good nor bad. It is how you use it inside your organization to solve your business problem. And that's just one of the messages I really think this case study highlights really, really nicely. So automation strategy, where should you start? Where do we start with it with our customers? How do we get people to get started on their automation journey, which is only one part of their DevOps journey. You're all familiar with the DevOps CALMS model: culture, automation, lean, measurement, sharing. Automation, only one of the 5 things you've got to be looking at. If all you do is focus on automation, you are not going to get the returns that you're hoping for. Okay? So culture, automation, lean, metrics, and sharing. A little bit of a history because because Justin said put a timeline of automation in there. So here's the timeline of automation to keep Justin happy. But basically, what we can see here is, way back when, I mean, we've been able to automate stuff for a long time. When I actually started in the IT industry, in a mainframe world in 1990, I could create an entire environment by running some JCL. It would IPL, initial program load, an MVS, so a mainframe operating system environment, inside a virtual machine that was running on IBM OS 360 VM. So a lot of this sort of technology and things have been around, but this story has evolved rapidly from the sort of generalized scripting languages that we had way back when. Then we move forward. Who remembers Norton Ghost? Way of imaging servers. Norton Ghost. Everybody kind of thinks that AMIs are something new. No, basically that's what that's back in 1995. You were taking these same kind of images with Norton Ghost. But then we see this acceleration that we see here of all of these great new tools coming in. Testing frameworks started to come in as test-driven development started to become popular. Continuous integration servers with Hudson, configuration management with Puppet and Chef. So all of this stuff, and when we really see an acceleration with the launch of AWS and Azure as the time goes on. And my timer hasn't started, by the way, so you're going to have to give me some time. So, lots of acceleration here, right up to now, with the launch of Docker and Docker containers, which we're going to be talking about in the track later, and then leading into orchestration tools like Kubernetes, Mesos, DCOS, Docker Swarm, and all that kind of stuff, which is sort of the cutting edge of large-scale operations. For those of you, who's from an ops background? Dev? Management? Nobody wants to admit. Okay, cool. A couple of people, good. Sorry, just on that, the future of operations is, operations of the future won't be managing servers. Operations of the future will be managing tools that managing servers. So you've got to get your head around orchestration layers. You've got to get your head around HashiCorp tools like Consul. You've got to get your head around Kubernetes and DCOS and all these kind of management platforms, not to mention, the automation tools like, Puppet and Chef and things like that. We'll talk about those later. That's what the future's looking for. The tools landscape, this one courtesy of Zebia Labs, because Gartner wouldn't let me use their slide. The tools landscape is enormous. I'm going to run you through a brief overview of this tools landscape in the second half of the talk. That's the periodic table of DevOps tools. It's available from Zebia Labs. The link is there. Just search for the periodic table, periodic DevOps tools. I mean, the number of tools, this is out of date already. The number of tools is exploding. There's a huge number of startups. But, there are multiple tools for each thing. But what we want to talk a little bit about is, where should I start on my automation journey? And then maybe we'll talk a little bit about some examples of the tools. So when you want to start, where do we want to start our journey? Well, Julie Andrews tells me that I should start at the very beginning. Maybe I'm going to start right over here at my GitHub, my source control end, and I'm going to move forward all the way through to operations in a nice linear manner. Maybe I'm going to start from the operations end and look at application release automation or server provisioning, and I'm going to walk back towards developer. Unfortunately, in this case, Julie's got it wrong. We don't want to start from the very beginning. We want to start from where the greatest constraint is. Who's read the Phoenix Project, a novel of DevOps? Good. Who knows that the Phoenix Project is really just the goal being rewritten for IT people? So this guy, Goldratt, came out with this theory of constraints, which is aimed at trying to get people to understand that systems, the flow across a system is really important, and systems have bottlenecks, and those bottlenecks can be managed in a way. So if we kind of look at this from an application lifecycle, we look at most organizations, and they kind of look like this. You have just a series of silos, all with queues. You know, at some point the helicopter boss comes in over the top, and he flies around on top of you and drops some more requirements in at the last minute and screws the whole thing up. And there's a constant flow of crap going back and forth, and there's a silo, and there's a war going on, and you know, this is what IT looks like in most organizations. And you wonder why burnout in the IT industry is going up, and why the customers are miserable. Okay? But what we're trying to move towards is to be optimized for flow. This is what Goldratt would want us to do. And the first thing we're trying to do is we're trying to get put a Kanban board, or a sort of a push-pull, a pull-based model. We're trying to get a product owner who's able to control the flow and the rate of features going through this system. We're trying to move to a small batch size. Can't estimate over-egg the importance of having a small batch size. Little tiny, let's just take a few ideas, get them through. Let's deliver some value. Let's get them flowing all the way through the system. I've got a multidisciplinary product-focused team, so moving away from projects to products. You know, hashtag no projects, Twitter, search for it on Twitter. You know, I've got all of these roles in a team. They're empowered to manage this process from soup to nuts. This is what a DevOps kind of model of flow looks like. And ideally, we end up with a happy customer, and we have, you know, reduced number of handovers, lower batch sizes, reduced cycle time, and removing queues, all those kind of good things. And there are tools that you can use inside your organization to help you try and find these bottlenecks and constraints. And one of the most common ones is things called value stream mapping. So you can run a value stream mapping exercise, and you map out the production line, your software development factory, whatever you want to call it. And you track how many people are involved, you track the lead time and the process time and the wait time, and you calculate a whole bunch of metrics. And from that, you can work out where the bottlenecks are. So lead time, how long it took from start to finish, how much you actually processing time, how much you actually did, wait time, how much it was spent stuck in a queue. Most organizations, you find that the wait time to process time ratio, the processing time is very, very small. The lead time is normally enormous. You know, back in the good old days, you know, it might take somebody half a day or an hour or something to build a server, but you had to wait 6 weeks because that's what the SLA with your outsourced service provider said, and they would leave it in the queue for 6 weeks until it was delivered. You know, that's the difference between lead time and process time. So Goldratt had this idea of these things called the 5 focusing steps. And you know, when you're trying to devise your automation strategy, what is the constraint in your system? What is the point in your system? Maybe it's environment provisioning. Maybe it's application release automation. Maybe it's configuration management. Maybe it's continuous integration. Almost certainly it's going to be test automation, unless you are a particularly mature test automation organization. And the idea is that you would identify that constraint. You would try and work that constraint as hard as you can. You'd align everything up so that it was throttled behind that constraint. And then, last but not least, after you've done the first 3 steps, you would then add more resource to the constraint, what they call elevate the constraint. More testers, more automation, more operations people, more, and you know, putting more resources into your DevOps transformation. And then continual service improvement, CSI, you know, you want to keep going around. So, you know, from an automation strategy point of view, you don't just think I'm going to start with configuration management. You know, really can't estimate. I've tried and do these value stream mappings exercises or event storming, any one of these big picture process technologies that will enable you to get a real clear understanding of where in your end-to-end life cycle you will have the biggest delays, the biggest bottleneck, therefore where you will get the biggest bang for your buck by spending your automation money. I mean, I have seen, you know, organizations who spend an inordinate amount of money in, say, environment configuration management, and not actually seen any noticeable improvement. And the reason was because the requirements were crap. You know, they would have got a lot more better putting in ServiceNow or putting in Jira or putting in Visual Studio work items and stuff and managing their requirements better. Conversely, you know, I've seen a lot of organizations spend a lot of money on sort of continuous delivery, but not put enough effort into test automation. And therefore, you know, because everybody's afraid of risk and everybody's afraid of taking their system down, unless you can deploy all this stuff with confidence, there's no point in having a system that allows you to deploy on demand if your test cycles take 12 hours of somebody looking at an Excel spreadsheet and manually doing the testing for you, you're never going to have the confidence to deploy. So, this is just some of the sort of things you need to think about in your test strategy. So, when we're sort of talking about the DevOps tool chain, I'm just going to basically walk you through what a good DevOps tool chain looks like, some of the tools and technologies. This bit's going to be a little bit dry. I apologize in advance, but I really hope that some people in the room are going to get some value out of it. But a DevOps tool chain, really what we're talking about is going through these steps. Now, various people have different versions of it, call it slightly different names, but it broadly looks like this across more organizations. Some organizations will break it up into more steps, but this is kind of what it looks like. And then you tend to have a whole series of steps that exist inside those stages of the tool chain. And then you tend to have a whole bunch of products that map onto, so Git, Octocat, TeamCity, Jenkins, Selenium, SonarQube, Atlassian Stack, Artifactory, Ansible, all the way down the end, and then you've got, AppDynamics down there as part of your monitoring stack. So I'm just going to walk through these. Number one, planning and requirements. You need a mechanism that gives you a good, solid automation framework around your requirements. Normally, if people are working in an agile waste world that's breaking it down to a user story, normally you might have some higher level user stories, you might have epics, you might have stories, you might have themes or initiatives or whatever other kind of higher level construct that you have. You're going to have Kanban boards that will help you track the flow of work, that help you pace this nice sequence of work to get that flow-based approach that you're looking for. And more importantly, what you're going to really want at this stage is I want to be able to go into a work item or an issue or a user story in Jira, and I want to be able to see who's worked on it, what builds happened to it, what source code was checked in against it, what branches of the code were related to it. And that all requires on downstream automation to be feeding this information back in. Somewhere over here in Jenkins, I'm firing off a webhook, which is calling into Atlassian Jira. That's ticketing to say, yeah, we did a build on this code, or here is this feature branch. The impact of having this kind of visibility linked all the way back, the second way of DevOps, create feedback loops, is so important. With one of our large enterprise telco customers, they went from 9 months lead time from requirement to having it deployed to a 6-month lead time to a 1-month lead time, simply by, we did a lot of environment automation for them as well, but a lot of it was this kind of visibility. Suddenly people in the management could see, hang on, I have this great dashboard on the plasma screen there, and I'm paying for 20 developers offshore, but I'm only seeing 4 people checking in. Can you please explain to me what the hell is going on? Management tends to like to have that visibility into the software factory. So, this automation is really important for the business as well as, the techie itself. So there's lots of benefits all the way, I think. And, we love Visual Studio, and we love Octocat with GitHub and GitHub Enterprise, not GitLab. Not anymore, anyway. So, we have the communicate phase. So who uses Slack? Yeah. Who loves Slack? Who's addicted to Slack? Yeah. Okay. A lot of people use Slack. Microsoft Teams coming up, quickly behind. Super important to have multiple levels of communication. And the good thing about the tools like Slack is they act as that central hub for what a lot of people have called chat ops, which is just the ability to, close the feedback loop. So, for example, when a Jira ticket gets open and closed for us, it sends a message into the Slack channel. If a build happens, or particularly if a build fails, it sends a message into the Slack channel. And as you move forward into that, people start to be able to reboot systems or kick an unhealthy system out just by typing a command into the chat tool. So it becomes this sort of centralized command interface. But you want to be able to have a really slick mechanism to communicate within your team, or within your customers. Like for us, when we onboard a new customer, we create 2 Slack channels, customer name dash internal and customer name dash external. The customer has access to the external channel. It's free in Slack. They're a single channel guest, so we can have really open and easy conversations with the customer. And we find a lot of people go, ooh, talking directly to the customer, ooh, not making them raise a Jira ticket. Well, we still raise a Jira ticket to track the work, but the benefits we get of having this conversation and the closeness we get with the customer really, really pays benefits for us. But just to point out, because I'll put my Microsoft hat on, Microsoft Teams is actually getting better. So if you are heavily invested in the Office 365 ecosystem, Teams is now a real viable competitor. And yeah, so it's not under NDA, I'm pretty sure, that some of the features around single channel guests and that kind of stuff is coming fairly soon. It's on the public roadmap. Okay, source control. I mean, who's using anything other than Git? Who's still using Subversion, Perforce, Mercurial? Okay. I mean, Git's basically just won the source control battle. I mean, Git's an open source tool. There are various flavors of it. Microsoft have their own implementation of Git, but I mean, it's really just won the battle. Obviously, you have GitHub as being the sort of de facto interface to it, and you can now have on-premise version of Git, as well as you can have an on-premise version of Visual Studio Team Services or TFS Enterprise, Team Foundation Server. So, going forward. It's all right. He made me turn my phone off, so it didn't happen to me, so don't worry about it. Cool. So, automated developer environments. Who uses Vagrant? Vagrant up. Great way, if you've got a new developer, they come in, you want to give them a development environment, you want to give them, something that's particularly if people you have remote teams and they want to work remotely, you get them a new laptop, Vagrants, and you get them to install Vagrant on it, they clone a repo down, they type Vagrant up, and bang, there's a virtual machine or a number of virtual machines running a version of their application that they can use for testing and verification purposes. Or it might actually be running some of the tools, just simply running some of the development tools that they want. Really, really, great tool if that's your model. Gives you a much lighter footprint on the developer's workstation. There are some performance overheads associated with it, but it's not a bad tool if you want to give developers the ability to go and work from the beach or work from the coffee shop and not be tied to development test environments in the cloud. Conversely, if you're in a regulated environment, maybe you do want them to be tied to development environments in the cloud that you have more control over. But you can reuse a lot of the configuration management. Everything's checked into source control and gives you some great capabilities. VMware, there is a Vagrant, paid-for Vagrant version with VMware Workstation, but apart from that, the open source version is free. So, and if you're not familiar with Packer from HashiCorp, it's a great way to help you build these images out. So that's basically just an overview of what the workflow looks like. I have a virtual machine manager in Vagrant. I have test environments, all the configuration management. We tend to use Ansible, pulling all of that configuration, my Vagrant config, my Ansible playbook, and then I can reuse this configuration. I can and use it in exactly the same way in my production environment, just by having a different set of variables. Database in SQL. I won't ask if there's any DBAs in the room, but the neglected, red-headed stepchild of most DevOps automation, second only to test automation, is database automation. There are some people who still come to me and say you can't do database automation. Yes, you can. There are plenty of vendors supplying tools in the space. Redgate's the one that we work with the most, simply because they've been doing it for the longest. Their tool set supports most of the major database flavors. I mean, I have in another presentation. I have a thing that that you want when your office is burning down, and what I want is a copy of my Git repo. I want a copy of a replica of my data that I've replicated off into a different availability zone or a different thing. I want a copy of my secrets, so my LastPass or my Vault or something like that, that's got all the secrets that I need for running my system. And then I need a credit card. And that's all I need, because I should be able to recreate my environment from those 4 things. And you know, if your database schemas are not checked into source control, if your database schemas are not treated like code, if your static data, you know, some of that configuration data that you might think is not stored in source control, I mean, that's relatively small normally. You can store it in an artifact repository as a binary dump or something if you need to. Don't store large binary dumps in your source control because it really upsets people when they're trying to clone it down. But you know, there are plenty of tools and technologies now that give you that sort of capability. This is just a tool from a slide from Redgate that kind of shows a bit of their tool set. But I mean, you know, the idea is that you have your source control, it triggers this continuous integration flow and then takes you through and then have monitoring and backup. And like all of these tools now, you know, the integration story for all of the DevOps tools is pretty good these days. Everybody basically plugs into everybody else. Everybody has an agent or a plugin or some kind of integration to make life easier. So, you know, if the tool that you're picking doesn't have a plugin model or doesn't have webhooks available for integration and pre and post triggers, then don't buy it. It's as simple as that, or don't use it, because it's just not going to fit into your workflow. You know, when you're evaluating tools these days, just look for those extensibility. Tell me the plugin that you've got that works with, enables me to send a notification to Slack or to PagerDuty. Tell me how I can fire a webhook to do, you know, to then connect to Zapier, or if this then that, then I can then integrate to just about anything. CI, so you know, we tend to use TeamCity. That's mainly because my business partner started in a sort of a .NET world. So you know, at the time, .NET TeamCity had really good integration. It was sort of the de facto thing of choice. A lot of people are big fans of Jenkins. There's Travis. There's online systems like Worker. Microsoft obviously have their own build engine with Visual Studio Team Services. There is an explosion of sort of tools in this CI/CD space. You go back to the slide, but it's quite, you know, pick one and just get on with it. Who's not doing continuous integration? Who would admit it if they weren't doing continuous integration? Okay, cool. Well, at least the CI, we've got as far as CI, at least the CI message is pretty well accepted now. Unit testing, you know, most people doing, well, a lot of people are doing a variant of TDD or some kind of test-driven development. You want to have these kind of unit test frameworks. If you work on any open source projects, most open source projects will require you to check in tests when you check in your feature or your pull request. You know, that's a great methodology to adopt into your enterprise. In fact, the whole inner source, you know, enterprise open source methodology is a great thing to look at and investigate. I think O'Reilly have got a free ebook on that if you want to go and read about inner source or enterprise open source. There are a million frameworks to pick from. You know, pick the one that suits your language the most. Pick the one that's easiest for you to use. I mean, in the Java world, JUnit's probably the most well-known. TestNG coming up second, and then you know. Pretty much every other language has I think there's a PHP unit, there's an N unit, there's every other language has a port that's basically a port of JUnit. Plenty of tool choices in that space. Static code analysis. Who runs static code analysis as part of their CI toolchain? Who thinks it gives them value? Okay, so we've got a lot of people put their hands up. One guy over there is going, It sounds like you were forced to implement static code analysis. I can tell you one thing, the information security guys love static code analysis. You know, it's a great way for them to put a whole set of rules into SonarQube about code security and code quality. We did some great stuff with one of our customers where I've got to put politely. The quality of the code that their outsourced partner was not producing was not very good. So we just put some very simple like code coverage linting rules and stuff like that into SonarQube, and then just said, and went with the agreement of the customer, your code shall not pass until you get this level of code coverage. And so like 6 weeks later, 3 sprint cycles, nothing got released. because they literally just couldn't even get past these really basic linting rules and code coverage rules. But it was great because the customer bought into that as a quality gate. Why am I having a cab meeting in order to control quality gates when I can have automated tools like static code analysis that'll help create that quality gate for me? And this is an area that there is a lot of investment in. A lot of people are creating new tools for, buzzwords, machine learning, AI, all that kind of stuff, to try and semantically analyze the code, looking for vulnerabilities, looking for code quality. So there's quite a lot of investment in this space at the moment, but there's plenty of tools. Packaging automation, as an operations guy, and my background is in infrastructure and operations, I want you to give me a single releasable package. I can't stress that enough. Don't give me a whole bunch of crap and a Word document that tells me I've got to do this and then do that and then pull this from here and install it down. I want you to give me a package, and I ideally want you to give me a package with an Ansible script that deploys that package and all of the dependencies, and I want it bundled up into an industry standard tool. I don't want a zip that your mates have put together that has a whole bunch of other binaries. Give me an industry standard package that works with a package manager. I mean, package management is so important. Even Microsoft are getting into the package management space now. Only 20 years behind the Linux community, but that's okay. But if you haven't checked it, if you're in the Windows space, check out Chocolatey. Come along to winops.org in September, our DevOps on Windows conference. Chocolatey will be running a workshop. It is really, really nice to start managing software on the Windows side in a package way, in the same way that you would manage it with apt-get or yum. Really nice. Test management. Are there anybody from the test community in the house? Yeah? Do you use HP Quality Center? Yeah, okay. You have my sincere apologies. It's a stinking pile of crap. And I apologize if anybody from HP is in the room. But this is my personal opinion. Your mileage may vary. I don't like it. I've used it extensively, and I still don't like it. The only problem is there aren't any really, really, really good alternatives for enterprise test case management. But you want to have a tool that enables both the devs and the tests to collaboratively work on creating test cases. Ideally, want to have test case automation. I want to be able to bundle test cases up into a test suite. I want to be able to track that they've been executed. Visual Studio has it. There are plugins and add-ons for Jira like Zephyr. Zephyr's not bad. It's getting better. If anybody else knows of any other really good test case management tools, please let me know, because I'm always on the lookout for a good one. But whatever you do, I mean, if you're still using Excel spreadsheets for managing your test cases, please stop. The guy at the back is crying. I apologize. Sorry. No, okay. It is an exercise in time-wasting futility. And I should know because my wife used to be the test manager for a couple of large enterprise retail customers in the UK. She had some awesome spreadsheets, but really, come on. 2017. Let's move on. Acceptance testing. Again, there's a million frameworks for acceptance testing. This kind of gherkin syntax, given then when kind of scenario. Really, really powerful way, particularly if you can push this out into the user community to start writing these acceptance testers in this given when then syntax, because a business person can write that, and then you can write all the features that sit behind it to actually do the automation. Running out of them, I've got 4 minutes and 23 seconds left. Yep. All right. Cool. We're at testing. We can crack on. Browser testing. Selenium is basically the de facto choice for browser-based UI testing. There are plenty of people that will host test automation for you. Unless you're feeling particularly masochistic and you want to actually manage your own test servers with multiple versions of browsers and multiple devices, then just get somebody else to do it for you. I mean, I have been through the pain of managing all of this stuff myself and managing multiple browsers and multiple agents, and it's really painful and not a value add to your organization either. one of the really key part of your release pipeline is don't be continually compiling stuff when you don't need to. If it hasn't changed, take that version and pull it from the artifact repository. It's an artifact repository like Sonatype Nexus, Artifactory, or ProGet in the .NET world, and then use tools like Visual Studio to manage the end-to-end release flow. Ideally, you want to try and manage that as much as possible. Predominantly because I want you to try and kill the cab as much as possible. I have a simple mantra for you, those of you in sort of really ITIL-enabled organizations. There's a simple thing. Given that a package, this is going back to the Gherkin syntax of given then when, given a release package is ready for deployment, when it is deployed by my super awesome automated pipeline that has all of these tests and verifications and checks and balances, therefore it is a ITIL standard change. And if it's an ITIL standard change, under the definition of ITIL, it's low risk, it's repeatable, I don't need to have CAB meeting for it. So it sails through. That's a great way to try and fire back against those people that says you must sit in a room for 4 hours every Thursday with your laptop there doing code, because you're not really listening, and then the CAB meeting comes up to your bit of the code and say, yeah, is this code good? And you go, yeah, this is really awesome, it's ready for release. And then you go back to coding, and then they let you out of the meeting after 4 hours of your life back. Everybody's smiling because everybody's experienced the non-value add. Again, from an automation perspective, if I can move 90% of what I do to ITIL standard change, what does that do to the accelerating my feature delivery time? I often describe DevOps as just ITIL with everything moved, 90% of everything moved to standard change. It's a great way to sell that to your IT security. No, we're not getting rid of ITIL, and we're not, because you've still got to do incident management, change management, problem management. You've still got to do all those ITIL disciplines. I'm just moving 90% of them to standard change and automating the crap out of it. Not long to get to go, I don't think. Okay, 10 slides in 2 minutes. Okay. This is where it gets blurry. Environment management, configuration management, application release automation. Most of these tools will do all of these things, or variants and parts of it. Where you want to split these tools up is sort of up to you. I like to split them and actually have 3 separate tools to do the 3 separate things, because I think it makes it cleaner and it doesn't over-rely me on one tool. I can switch stuff in and out of these areas. We tend to use Terraform, the same people who make Vagrant, same people who make Packer. Mitchell Hashimoto, a little shrine in the corner of our office to Mitchell Hashimoto, the founder of HashiCorp. Really like that stuff. Configuration management, which is basically the bit that says this computing environment, these servers, this whatever, looks the way I want it to look. It has all the dependencies. It's all been deployed. It's configured in the right way. Puppet, Chef, Ansible, Salt Stack, configuration engine, CF engine if you're feeling particularly masochistic. PowerShell DSC from Microsoft. It's also cross-platform now. Just pick one of them. There are lots of enterprise tools vendors. I tend not to use them, basically because it's a lot easier to hire people that know Puppet, Chef, or Ansible, or PowerShell than it is them to hire some obscure large vendor product. Again, your mileage may vary. This is my opinion only, but I'm not a big fan of suites. I think the days of suites are dead. I think the days of best-of-breed point solutions that have really good integration is here to stay. Application release automation, so the bit that takes this great package you've given to me as an operations person, deploys it out across my estate maybe in a nice rolling updates. Maybe it'll move stuff in and out of load balancers. It enables me to manage my environment-specific configuration, all that kind of stuff. This is what ARA tools give you. Again, we tend to use Octopus Deploy on a Windows thing, or Ansible, controlling the de facto package management solutions that are inside Linux anyway. Again, there are a million choices in this space. Docker, there's going to be a talk on Docker later. I'm quite looking forward to that. I'm not an expert on Docker by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, at the end of the day, Docker's just another packaging format. You just have to be packaging a lot of your operating system dependencies along with your code in a nice bigger package. It has a lot of performance benefits, but I'm sure that the next speaker will go through it in a lot more detail. But you know, a lot of people love it. So in my massively oversimplified version of operations, there's three things that operations care about now. I care about orchestration, managing all these moving parts, juggling all these balls. I care about monitoring, which is the bit that tells it that something's on wrong, and then I want to have a really good alerting mechanism. I tend to separate monitoring and alerting out. They're two separate things. You know, we'll talk about in a minute. Orchestration, great tools like, you know, Rundeck, Ansible Tower. A lot of people use Jenkins as their automation tool. Don't. It's a CI tool. If you want an orchestration tool, use an orchestration tool. Moving forward to containers and beyond, Kubernetes, Mesos, Docker Swarm, Cloudify, all these kind of stuff that's moving forward for large-scale integration of Docker solutions. Obviously, I'm not going to bite the hand that feeds me. AppDynamics is our monitoring tool of choice. I tweeted out an image, if you do search for the AppD Summit hashtag, of Jyoti Bansal, the AppDynamics CEO, in 2011, presenting at a user group I ran to 27 people. And now I come to an event like this 6 years later, and you realize how much bigger AppDynamics has become. And the reason AppDynamics has gotten a lot bigger is because it's an awesome frickin' tool. You know, I used to run a professional services team that did load testing prior to starting DevOpsGuys. And you know, I would not do load testing without using AppDynamics. You know, it's just such a good tool, and you know, the range of things that it gives you, and it has all the integration with all of the great alerting tools: PagerDuty, OpsGenie, VictorOps. And you've got multiple different notification channels. We tend to use Slack, or most of these days will actually provide you with a mobile app that will awake you with a really, really loud honking noise at 3 a.m. in the morning. So, in summary, with 6 minutes and 42 seconds of question time left, automation is good, bad, and ugly, as we saw in the case study example at the start. It is inevitable. You know, automation is a tidal wave that is coming to every job. There is an AI now that will actually assemble code for you from automated repository from GitHub by taking things from GitHub. So you describe what you want and it will go out and assemble code for you. So automation is coming at all levels. Please start at your constraint, not where you think the problem is. Actually spend some time really understanding where is the biggest bottleneck in your system. Look at the whole system before you decide to fix one bottleneck, and there are many, many, many choices. I would say is don't spend months and months and months on really expensive evaluations. Just pick a tool and get cracking. Get started. You know, have a trial. Run a small pilot. You know, really be aggressive and start learning, because the feedback learning is important, and your mileage may vary. These views are mine and mine alone. Hopefully you found them interesting and useful. Thank you very much.
Yep. Any questions, Steve? There must be some, surely.
Those people who were crying in the corner when I was talking about how bad the CAD meetings were, surely you must have a question. No?
What are your thoughts on the single?
So we'll just bring the mic over so everyone can hear. Sorry.
So yeah, what are my thoughts on a single CI?
Instance, so TeamCity across multiple pieces of software, as opposed to just an installation of TeamCity for one piece of software?
Well, very interestingly, we have that problem with a customer, and they're in the process of breaking it out to have multiple instances. You know, for not quite one for each team, but you don't want your build server to be a bottleneck for your team. So it really comes down to the capacity and constraint about that. I don't see a problem with having multiple instances. I can't remember the licensing model, but I mean, yeah, I would have enough instances I need to have a nice, steady flow of work. And you can do stuff with managing the configuration and source control now anyway, so, yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone agree with what Steve suggested? Or
Anybody disagree?
yes. Oh, we have a hand. We have a hand that's shot up.
Yeah, please. Hopefully you don't work for HP.
In fact, it is not a question, but it is comment. This is the first time I attend a seminar about OpDev, and it is that clear and really show that is DevOps. Because most of the time, DevOps, when they speak on ops only, not dev.
Okay.
But this is first time
Good.
I feel that this is really DevOps, which I feel you explained to me what I need, how to work on it, and how to communicate with ops, those clearly.
Oh, thank you very much.
So
Thank you.
Why they won the award, you see. Most innovative, you see.
the other thing about automation. Automation, if you want to fear the businessmen or women, so speak about automation to make everything invisible, which these things which make them mad.
Yeah. I'd agree. It's very interesting when we go in and we try and lead with a cultural transformation story with DevOps, because if you lead with a pure automation story, you just immediately get this, whoa, you're here to take my jobs, you're here to thing. Once you start the automation, the cultural change, we're here to make your life better. We want to ship more products to our customers. We had a piece of feedback from one of our customers, large insurance company based in Wales. There's not really many choices, but and the best bit of feedback I honestly think I've had in my career was one of the guys that's from the customer who's working on the team. He said, I'm now enjoying coming into work again. Because I'm so excited about what we're doing and how this is going to change my organization and how this is going to change the way we work. The interesting objection we get with a lot of this kind of stuff is senior management really wants it. The people on the ground really want it. The managers in the middle don't want it because they're worried about their little empires and their little fiefdoms. And this is where I've got another whole presentation on sort of how to overcome organizational change. But it is interesting to see where you strike the resistance in your organization.
So we have one more question here, I think, or two more questions, three. They're all coming out of the woodwork now. Okay, great. This gentleman here first, and then there's one at the back. Great, and one in the middle, I kind of think, as well. So,
One there.
well,
Yeah.
it's like an auction. It's great.
So, on one of your last slides, you say that for monitoring, obviously, you'd recommend using AppDynamics, and for alerting, you say maybe using PagerDuty. Do you think that the alerting that AppDynamics provides isn't as great as what you maybe get in PagerDuty, or why would you choose PagerDuty for alerting rather than the alerting that you get in AppDynamics?
Yeah, well, partly it's historic because the alerting features when we were first doing this weren't as robust. I mean, the things that an alerting specific tool gives me is stuff like on-call rotations and automatic escalations of notifications. So an ability to change the rotation. So I have my team set up on rolling, all that kind of scheduling of who gets notified about which one, when, what. I don't know whether AppDynamics even has that kind of,
Take that offline.
Yeah, I think it has a monitoring, but it's because I'm managing a larger distributed team. Plus, I have customers who want to be notified as the third level and things like that. I need more flexibility. Yep.
Anytime, two more questions. I think we have a couple at the back there. Oh, sorry,
One and
more there as well.
Yep.
Gentleman in the yellow shirt.
Just wondered if you could expand a bit. You made a comment that things are moving away from suites and towards best-of-breed tools. I kind of agree with that, but I'm wondering what's made that possible, and do you think it'll go back to suites? Or
Okay, so my view on the suites versus best-of-breed tools. I think the main difference is the sort of plug-in and webhook integration model is that if you look at DevOps Express, I think, is what it's called. It's a lot of the major DevOps tools vendors. They're all independent vendors, but they're committed to working together. And everyone has a plugin for everybody else. If you look at the list of plugins that's available for Jenkins and the list of plugins available for TeamCity, the list of things that will integrate into Slack, the list of things that HughBot from Slackbot can call, they're all making it so easy to integrate with each other. Because they understand they're part of a value chain and they're part of an ecosystem. That said, there are enterprise use cases, and the specific enterprise use case is about roles-based access control. Okay, I want to have compliance. I want to have logging, I want to have roles-based access control. So there are ways you can do that. You plug everything into Azure Active Directory or Google Auth or OAuth or something like that, and most of the tools will support that as an authentication mechanism. You take all the logs that they produce and stick them into Elasticsearch or Operations Management Suite or Splunk, and you do it that way. Whereas there are, the suites will give you, that's what they're giving you. They're giving you that compliance and roles-based access control. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Time, I think, just for one more question, if
Yeah.
that's good.
Hello, hi. I basically come from API automation in CI, but traditionally I get stuck between automation, CI, and following the traditional approach. Where we have to prepare master test plans, TRAMs, final test exit reports, and then Excel sheets that and there is HPLM. Where do you actually see or believe that how testing should function in a DevOps world? And what are the lines that needs to be, merged between, or should be grayed out? Yes, these things we don't need because everything is automated. You write automated tests and everything. Those are maintained in GitHub. But where does this traditional things of master test plan, RAM, all this? Where do you see that things?
Yeah. Okay. So, funnily enough, I have a whole presentation on that too. Where do I see that in the short version? What I want to say. So first of all, I don't have a separate test team. The test team is part of that multidisciplinary team diagram that we saw before. I very much see, we talk about pair programming. I want to see pair programming between a developer and a tester. That's the direction that I see it happening. I mean, testers are going to, if all you know how to do is manually step through stuff in a browser, then sorry, but your job's gone. Just be brutally honest. You're going to have to become a lot more like a developer. So if you start to see collaboration between the developer and the tester, where somebody's working, you're working on the unit tests in an iterative cycle. You're also, maybe you're working on the acceptance test stuff, and you're building the features that sit underneath your Gherkin syntax, and you're working really, really closely on a feature by feature basis with the developer in that small batch size flow-based model. That's to me what it looks like. You still need a certain level of high-level constructs because I still need a certain level of acceptance testing, at a beyond a feature level to a product level to an entire releasable estate level. But this is where at that level, monitoring, so testing is starting to look a lot more like monitoring and operations, and I want to start reusing my Selenium script, and I want to start reusing my test automation as part of my monitoring. And we talk about monitoring-driven development. So I have tests that are running here very similar to the tests that I would be running in my the same tests as I'm running here in my acceptance testing mod, and that's part of my operations package as well, because that will fire off an alert and tell me when something stopped working. Does that help?
Yeah. But
Thanks, Steve.
the portion of, sorry, just one line. There's a portion of all these metrics things from testing perspective. This should evaporate, I guess, then.
I think probably if we take it offline just because of time. Just
sure.
a quick
Okay,
one. Sorry,
thanks.
folks. So first things, I've actually discovered this monitor works the other way. It goes red, and it tells you how much you're overrunning by.
Oh, are we overrunning?
Yeah, we are overrunning. Ooh. Okay, so that's good. Oh, no, we're good. We heard applause. We're good. Just a quick couple of things, folks. If, Steve, you could go to the feedback slide where we just show Slido. If you go to slido.com and hashtag AppD, there is opportunity to provide feedback on Steve's session.
On the slide?
There we go.
Put it
Just
on.
right at the feedback, just after questions.
Oh,
Good.
right.
Oh, good.
No, I'm at
Okay.
the end of my.
Okay.
It's not on the deck.
Good. Okay, just go one back. There we go.
Oh,
Wonderful.
right, there.
Okay, great. Any feedback for Steve would be fantastic. We've got lunch just being served now as well. If you're interested generally in the theme of DevOps, please do come back for the next session. We have Standard Bank here talking about their real-world experience. We have registrations from over 30 different countries, so it's a great international story here. They're from South Africa. Really, really good journey that they've been on as well. So please come back for that one. And thanks very much. Hand for Steve.
Thank you.